Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me. It's been very nice to be back here, and it's very nice to see so many old friends as well. The course of our lives, we all know, is kind of indeterminable. We never know, even the wisest among us, where we're going to end up and what we're going to end up doing. But we do know that for the last 20, 30 years, been phenomenal change in everyone's life, and texting, whatever that is, blueberries and blackberries and all these new things that we're all dealing with. But the trend is, and I think we can be assured the trend is that it will continue. And so that makes it even more important to be successful in the workplace today, to have an education that is more than technical. It has to be an education that's broad and it's deep, and that it prepares people for the capacity to adapt. I think that's really what liberal arts is supposed to be, and that's what it does. It's the hard part, I guess, in anticipating what we do and appreciating the value of our education, is that it's difficult to grasp it when you're a student, and the luxury of a later assessment as to what value it was is difficult, because it's actually part of the experiences of our life. In college, sure, there were some courses that we read about the Caleb that sounded really neat, and there are others, especially in the 2 years when we were wading through mandatory courses, that seemed to be arbitrary, totally useless into your future life, even if you didn't know what your future life was. I mean, my was college algebra. I couldn't understand how that could possibly relate to anything in my life. 1 and 1 is 2, fine. But what's a 2? I don't mean to be simplistic, but that didn't make any sense to me. But regardless of the courses that didn't seem to make sense in our as yet undefined future, the servings that we were offered in history and art and philosophy and contemporary civilization and economics, it presented a very colorful palette from which to choose and from which to learn. And then we graduated, and of course, we all went our separate ways, and some of us were following logical paths from our majors, if you will, and others of us went a different way, or 2 or 3 or 4. But even though it's after a start or two, upon graduation and living this environment, one does not really reflect on the advantages of that environment and how it's to benefit oneself. Except, of course, we all know that the broad education that we receive makes us really superior to everybody else. The crossword puzzles. In my case, I went on to study law and to become a practicing attorney. Law school is very different from liberal arts school. It's a very specialized training, and it's specialized in government. And it's just the opposite. It's Socratic and it's casebook method, with the exception of Yale, where they learn. Well, we'll talk about that later. Now, our assignment for today was to talk about the value of this liberal arts education in our own lives. And in thinking about what to share with you today, I decided to share an incident in my life which really was probably the most important for me in preparing for law school, even more important for preparing for the various things that I would face both in the practice of law and in public service, the unexpected events, the opportunities, the crises. And when I graduated high school, I had a record that was sufficient to get me a full scholarship from the foundation. I went to Gettysburg College. I had the grades that were good enough. The academics in high school weren't really that tough. So I was really scared when I got to Gettysburg College. And I really worked hard. I really learned how to study when I came here. When I was graduated from Gettysburg, I left I have had wonderful experiences. I have achieved academic success. I had the rewards of being the highest departmental honors, and my comps were the highest. I mean, I really felt that I had a record that would help me to get into law school, and certainly did. I had experienced the honor and the rewards of selection by my peers in my fraternity, my class, and the fraternity council. And I had been off to a prestigious law school with a full scholarship. And I distinctly remember feeling horrible despair as I was getting ready to drive home from getting to college upon graduation. By myself, I want to go home. I felt despair because I really felt it was a fraud. And I mean that because I felt I had achieved academic success, but not because I was bright, but because I had mastered the art of taking tests. I had learned how to cram and take a test. I knew that all I had to do was cram, regurgitate back what the professors wanted to read, and I would be successful. And so I really hadn't learned much. I hadn't really learned in my own mind original thinking. It was just regurgitation and short-term at that. So now I was going to go to a prestigious law school, national law school, not for some of my professors had suggested I go to another school, but I was going to the big time as far as law schools go. And so I was very troubled as I started to drive home. And as I drove, my mind wandered, and I remembered looking back. I had lost my father when I was 11, and I wished he could have seen me graduate. I was the first one in my family to even go to college. And then I remembered conversations that I had with him, and I revered my father. And I remember one in particular. My father's father was an immigrant from Germany. Our family name was Flugfelder. And family pride was big in my family. And I remember asking him one time, why did you change our name? And he explained very carefully, very slowly, and deliberately that he was in New York at the time, in the advertising business. And this was a hard name to remember in a catchy business. And so Flugfelder, Felder is field, fielding. That was the explanation. And I drove along a little more, and remembering this, it suddenly dawned on me that might not have been the only reason he changed the name. German, 1938-39, New York, advertising business. It might not have been the reason. And I must tell you, there I was challenging something that was told to me, and I've repeated many times, by somebody that I really beloved. And now I was questioning whether he had actually told me the truth. And I felt guilty at first, and then suddenly I realized for the first time the answer to whether it was true or not didn't matter. What really mattered was I realized I had learned to think. I had learned to reason. I had learned to challenge thoughts, even from sources that I revered. And it was actually a liberating experience for me because it gave me a great sense of self-confidence. Self-confidence that I had actually, thank you Gettysburg College, had learned something. I learned the gift of intellectual reasoning, if you will. And that confidence has really held me throughout the rest of my life. I may not always know the answer, I may not always be right in the conclusion, but I do have the confidence to know they have the ability to reason and to learn and to think problems through. And that, after all, is really, I recommend, that's really the genius of a liberal arts college. It's not just to learn a code or a law, it's not to repeat a formula, it's not to analyze given social problem. That's not the answer. It's to be able to create a new law if one's needed, to meet a new problem, to devise a formula when none exists, to analyze a social change in environment and come up with a peaceful and new way to deal with that sort of problem. I've read, and I think actually it's from Jan, 7 out of 10 jobs in 20 years don't exist today. And if that be the case, those that have to fill those jobs, those that have to meet those challenges, and those that have to lead us need an education to prepare them to do that, and prepare them to have the ability to reason in uncharted words. And in all of our discussions, I guess I've omitted one huge other thing about why I value my liberal arts education. And that is that it opens one's eyes and one's mind to your environment, everything around you. It's literature, it's science, it's government, it's economics, it's sociology. It gives you a taste of all that's around you. And it makes you look at all the things that make up our life and our environment and our heritage. And it's a taste that many, it will become an application, others it will become a vocation. But certainly, it enriches our lives. Thank you.